All right, let's go to MKB, who was there last night, a raucous crowd. And Michael, I guess, give us a little bit of perspective on the background between these two guys, because there's some tweets that seem personal. There seems to be a lot of back and forth. I mean, was there anything last year that you remember that kind of led up to what we saw last night?
Yeah, Mike, I mean, there's definitely a bit of a history between the two. I don't think I realized it was quite as, like you said, I guess personal as it appears to be now. It goes all the way back to, obviously Towns was the number one pick the year after Embiid was drafted. So naturally, as two of the better big men in the game, they're going to be compared to each other. Joel, had a post back in 2017, the first time they played against each other, and him and Carl went back and forth in the comments of that a little bit. I think Joel called out his defense, something like that. And then, last night was just a physical game. I said it before the fight that those two were really going at it. Joel, specifically really seemed to be, kind of trying to overpower Towns, take him down to the post. He was using his size and really like banging bodies together. It was a physical game. And then it just seemed to, it came out of nowhere, that it just escalated that quickly. And I think it kind of caught everybody off guard. It was a fast break play. And I think a lot of people were looking, at the fast break. And then you look back on the other side of the court and they're basically wrestling.
Yeah. So who won? 10-8 round? What do you got? Because I asked that question jokingly, but I asked the question in a way that, Embiid, they're trying to claim, the Sixers are anyway, that Embiid didn't throw any punches and therefore shouldn't be suspended. And that, the fact that Karl Anthony Towns threw a punch, I think it missed. But do you think that the scuffle, the brawl, the fracas, if you will, will cause Embiid to miss games, or will it be his actions after the fight? I mean, quite frankly, if you're a Philly fan, you'll love it. But if you're just an NBA fan watching it, I think he went pretty far, getting the crowd going and just absolutely, hamming it up afterwards. Do you think that is the part that could get him suspended?
Yeah, Mike, that's a good point. I think probably the entire appearance of the whole package really doesn't help this cause. And he was pretty adamant afterwards. He came out. He actually spoke to media before Brett Brown last night, which, as you know, is pretty interesting. They usually always bring Brett out first and then the players. But Joel actually came out first and talked to the media. And he was pretty adamant at that point that he didn't think that he deserved a suspension. He was kind of skeptical, but he didn't expect there to be one. He said that he wasn't the instigator and that he didn't throw any punches, and he thought that those two factors, should save him from a suspension. But when you look at the optics of it, it was obviously a pretty...
Yeah, right. How much is his social media antics afterwards? How much does the social media antics afterwards get him in trouble then?
Yeah, that combined with the optics, and him egging on the crowd and then going on social media and obviously using some choice language and things like that. I think the entire package, it's drawn too much, negative attention to the situation that I would be surprised at this point if he doesn't at least get a game or two for the entire package of the situation.
MKB, what's up, man? It's Ryan. And, this whole situation is... it's funny, and it's fun to me. It's Embiid in a nutshell, but it's not funny when it seems like he took it a little bit too far. I know that's his personality, and that's social media, and that's the world we live in now. But I saw on Get Up earlier that the whole crew, the panel of like 12 guys they had on the show, was debating, if this is a bad look and for their brand and for the league. Do you think that this is not a good look for Embiid, and maybe he needs to dial it back a little bit? The on-court thing is one thing, but to take it to the level that he did on social media later in the night, I'm not under this line of thinking, but I know how it's perceived, and it could be perceived as dial it back, dude.
Yeah, but Ryan, that's a good point. It's good to talk to you, man. But, I feel like I'm kind of on the other side of the fence a little bit. I feel like, everyone today, there's so much, everyone's trying to, PC everything and, please everybody with everything. And, yeah, he probably used some words that maybe he probably shouldn't have used in his tweets. But honestly, I love the back and forth that, he posted something, Carl posted something, and that adds to it. And I think anyone that's honestly played basketball at one point or another has had some sort of exchange, maybe not on Twitter for millions to see, but a back and forth with an opponent like that. and it just kind of adds to the the entire experience of the game. And for me, I wasn't bothered by it. I thought it was kind of entertaining, if anything. And I think it's kind of his personality. That's who he's been, and I for one wouldn't ask him to change.
Hey, Mike, it's Jeff Mosher. Good to talk to you. I'm the only one here who hasn't met you yet, so I'm sure I will someday. I wanted to ask you about the Ben Simmons element to this because I think he was deemed a peacemaker, but videos show him at the bottom of the pile kind of giving the full Nelson treatment to KAT there. Do you think that something will result from that?
Well, the interesting thing about that, Jeff, is the pool reporter, which was
it Rob Maddie?
Rob Maddie last night. Mm-hmm. They sent me the transcript, and I saw it. He said the official said that they deemed Simmons to be a peacemaker.
That's what I said, yeah.
Now, Minnesota is saying he
saying
was no peacemaker.
Right. And the videos support Minnesota.
By God, he's got a steel chair.
Yeah, I mean, I think, they looked at it several times, Jeff and Mike, like you said, we got the word from the official pool reporter. That came down after they had watched this thing, several times from several angles. Timberwolves went to the league office and said that, they thought that he was, the opposite of a peacemaker. And then the Sixers kind of went back again after that and said that, they thought he was a peacemaker and that, Towns instigated the whole thing. So, obviously you kind of expect both teams to do that. But, I don't think that Ben really deserves a suspension. He really was, it seemed like trying to separate the guys, pull Towns away. I wouldn't be shocked either, again, just considering the optics of the whole thing, and he had him in a chokehold. But, I think that it was viewed after, several times that he was, still a peacemaker, quote unquote. So I think, it was a lot to have to go against that now, a lot of lobbying on the Timberwolves' part. So, I don't think necessarily, I do think Joel will get a game or two, but I would be, somewhat surprised if Ben gets one.
Michael Kaskey-Blomain covers the Sixers and the NBA for CBS Sports. Was in Philly last night for Sixers and Wolves. Let me ask you this. So I've said for the last couple of years, to take down the Warriors, you can't try to out-Warriors the Warriors. Somebody's going to have to do something where they do something so different where everyone else is going to have to now try to conform to you. Is that what you're seeing the Sixers do? Are they trying to do something that will make other teams say, we have to try to get physical and get bigger because otherwise we can't beat that team?
Yeah, absolutely, Mike. And this is something they kind of touched on last night. I think, it's only 4 games into the season, but you've already seen that this team has a clear identity. A lot of times it takes 20 games, 30 games, halfway into the season for a team to really, establish an identity. That was certainly the case with the team last year, given all the changes in the roster. And I think now you're seeing already that this is a team that's, defensive first, and they're big, and they're going to use their size and their physicality. It's not as much a finesse team, even as they've been in the past couple of years, and clearly it's not going to be a team that, shoots the lights out a la the Warriors over the past 5 years. It's going to be a team that's going to beat you defense first and then pound, look for mismatches and then try to take you in the post and in the paint and capitalize and get to the line. And that's just, obviously something that a lot of teams aren't going to be able to match up with. They don't have that type of front court in terms of both the size and the talent of, 2 guys like Horford and Embiid, and then you bring in capable guys like Kyle O'Quinn and Mike Scott. It's it's a big lineup that just a lot of teams can't match. So it's definitely going to be, a thing constantly where you're seeing a size mismatch night in and night out.
Yeah, absolutely, MKB. And, Gil's question to you just had me thinking a little bit because the Warriors example is a good one. You look at the Sixers game so far this season, and it's very early on, but every team has conformed to the Sixers' identity, and they've tried to get physical, and they've gotten in other teams' heads, and the games have all been, air quotes, ugly, but guess what? It's a winning formula, and like you said, they know their identity at this point, which is much easier said than done. But the one area that's interesting for me to keep an eye on, and I'm sure you're keeping an eye on, is the backup point guard position, because Richardson has slided over into that spot when Simmons goes off the floor, and he's kind of the leader of that second unit. He's not a point guard. So how do you think that experiment is going, and is that going to be enough throughout the regular season and into the postseason?
Yeah, that's a great question, Ryan. I think it's definitely going. I think that Brett's definitely, I think he's been pleased to an extent. Like, it certainly hasn't been, a terrible experiment or anything like that. I do think there's times where you can see that, Josh just simply isn't a natural point guard, and that, that's not a knock on him at all, but that's just not the position that he grew up playing. So some reads and some things that a guy, who's used to having the ball in his hands all the time and making plays would make, he doesn't necessarily make. With that being said, I do think it's something they're probably going to have to address at some point, before the playoffs. Obviously Brett doesn't have, a ton of confidence in either, Raul Neto or Trey Burke. Trey Burke is, basically out of the rotation, and Neto is, not too much further ahead of him, it seems. So, it does seem like something that they'll have to address. In the short term, it seems fine. Obviously, they're getting by with it. He's done a decent job, obviously a great job defensively, and they have enough talent, around him when Josh is serving as the point guard to, still get the job done. But I think that's something that Elton is probably, obviously going to have to look at come the trade deadline to, maybe bolster up with a point guard that's, a true point guard to come in and play some minutes for the team.
Hey, Mike, I think we're all letting the brawl and some bad overall shooting by the Sixers distract us from the real fact that I don't know if I've seen a rookie play defense ever better than Matisse Thybulle. When you watch him and then when you talk to the team and maybe people around the league, are you getting a vibe that this is something very unique and special to see a guy like that and what he's been doing early on? I know it's just a few games, but, I mean, that was his reputation, and he's probably exceeded it already?
Yeah, and especially Josh, if you consider the fact that he's stepping on and basically serving as the sixth, seventh man of a team that has championship aspirations and is good enough to win a championship. Usually rookies at that point don't get to contribute that high of a level to a team that's that good, quite frankly. And like you said, it's also pretty astonishing to see that they knew he came out of college with a defensive reputation, defensive player of the year. But there was obviously some skepticism whether how quickly that would translate, and I think everyone knew he would be good. But I think around the league, and especially even within Philly, and the coaching staff, I think there's some surprise at how quickly it's translated to the point that Brett can trust him already to go out there and put him on a Kemba Walker for a substantial amount of time, or, a Trey Young or something like that.
Yeah, and I guess just to follow up on that, Michael, is if you're the Sixers or, you look at the landscape of the league, can you be a title contender where one of your top rotational players off the bench is a, middle of the first round? Do you feel comfortable if he's your sixth or seventh man in terms of your depth?
Mike, I think it depends on his development. Right now, no, because I don't think he's, consistent enough on the offensive end. He obviously knocked down a couple of shots last night. But, as a rookie, as you would expect, that's been a little bit slower to translate for him, than the defensive side has been. So, I still think the verdict is out. This kind of ties back into the, we were talking about that backup point guard spot. I think the verdict is still out on the depth of the Sixers when it really counts. They've looked pretty good so far, but it's in a small sample size. I think, when it comes down to it in a series, when you really depend on a couple of guys, they might still need to go get another scorer off the bench somewhere, whether that be a backup point guard that comes in that's the sixth man, or another wing. I do think that's something to look at. But with that said, I do think Thybulle will be a key rotation piece all the way through to the postseason.
The Bull, Matisse Thybulle. He's Michael Kaskey-Blomain at The Real Mike KB on Twitter. Read his stuff at CBS Sports. And, of course, the Sixers back in action. We got a West Coast trip heading to Portland Saturday. We'll have that game at 10 o'clock on 97.3. They play the Red Hot Suns. The Suns just bombed the Warriors last night. We'll be talking to Michael throughout the basketball season here on the Sports Bash. Thank you, pal.
Thanks, fellas. Great talking to you.